Yes, everyone, you know what time it is. It's your boy Jack and Dave here, joined by Lee, the Dorset Spur, and it's going to be another therapy session here via this podcast. Just picture us, Lee. We're in the back seat of your car. We're just keeping you company. For a nice little chat about sort of the Spurs mayhem and the Spurs chaos. And before we dive into it, how are you?
Yeah, no, I'm all good. I'm all good. Actually, it would have been good if we'd had a little picture, wouldn't it, of you kind of sat behind me in the driving seat. That'd have been pretty cool,
I
actually.
would.
I have to think
Should
about something
be
like that.
should be a new video on your channel when you're driving in the car. Just have two people in the back talking about Tottenham. It'd be awesome.
Give me
Yeah,
thumbnail ideas, that's for sure.
yeah.
But I'm looking forward to this one, Lee, because you are as much as we like having new guests and new faces and fresh perspectives. It's a tough week that I think we're going to be diving into, and some tough
Mm.
topics is for sure. But everybody, if as always, hit that like button, please, and get your comments down below on the various topics that we will be discussing. And the first one here, like maybe Dave said in the back end earlier, it's not as obvious as it maybe looks. This sort of question, but take yourself back to the time when Jose Mourinho was sacked here, everybody, and Ryan Mason was put in charge for the rest of the season. It seems on paper to be quite kind of similar, right, to where we are right now. While both situations on the surface look like we've gone in a complete circle, if you were to look at both as an iceberg, would you say we are actually in a worse situation now, Lee, than we were then? Or is the situation maybe now just as bad maybe as it was then? Basically, if they kind of look similar on paper, but are they maybe different in some way?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I guess on face value, I would say I would say that we are in a worse position now. And the
Mm,
reason why I say that mainly is because it really doesn't feel like there's a plan. And I know there was so when Mourinho went, I felt like that was a knee jerk reaction. They'd obviously fallen out over the Carabao Cup situation, and so it turned into an issue between Levy and Mourinho. But I felt that there was an opportunity, a plan that could come from that. Obviously, we had all that time without a manager and all the rest of it, which you know that bit makes it feel like we're probably in a similar situation. But I felt like there were options out there that would still take us further forward. Whereas at the moment, in my own personal view, is there is absolutely no plan whatsoever. They've got no idea what they're going to do. They've got no idea where they're going. You sack the manager, keep his assistant, sack his assistant, put his assistant in charge, and then what now? What next? Where do we go from here? I mean, it is just one shit show after another. So
mhm,
for me personally, I feel like we're in a worse position now because
yeah,
I said when they I'm sorry if I'm rambling, but I said when
no,
they appointed Conte that this was Daniel Levy's last chance saloon, right?
yeah,
Because
I remember that.
we've gone with projects. We went with all that time with Pochettino, who took us to the edge, restored the faith in the club, built some pride, made us feel like we belonged. We then sold our soul to a turnaround manager, silverware proven manager who was just going to, all we needed was to go that one step further. And they cut that off. And so the next option is to go for another manager of similar to Mourinho. So if this doesn't work, which it hasn't, where do you go from there?
He doubled
What's the
down on the
plan?
win now manager sort of strategy, right? He did it again.
Exactly.
Like he learned. You thought maybe he learned his lesson with Jose Mourinho, if that wasn't the strategy that seemed to work for him. But no, he doubled down on it and went for it again with Antonio Conte. And I agree. Actually, I remember a lot of fans member saying sort of like, yeah, last chance saloon for Levy. If he gets this right, he kind of undoes. Maybe a lot of maybe backward sort of steps and decisions, of the past. But if he gets this wrong, just further puts us, kind of in this sort of spiral. But just as a quick follow up, Lee, do you kind of know what I mean by sort of the iceberg, right? Where like on the paper, on the surface, right, the icebergs kind of look similar in this scenario. Like
Mm,
it's Ryan Mason back in charge. It kind of just looks on paper the exact
yeah.
same. But I don't believe actually it's a full circle. I believe it's either we are maybe in a slightly better position or we are actually secretly in a much worse position despite it looking actually quite similar on paper. It seems weird for it to just be as simple as like a complete circle. If anything, I think there's probably things either below the surface that obviously us Spurs fans are well aware of, but let's say if someone were to look at this from maybe a non-Spurs fan's perspective. They might just think it's just a simple circle, just kind of Spurs kind of just going in this loop-to-loop type of cycle. But I actually agree with you. I think it might be actually worse than that in some scenario.
Yeah, I honestly do think that it's just the worst I've ever seen. I said that I was talking to someone recently, and I said that I don't feel that I've ever been as disconnected with my club as I feel now, which is crazy, right? I've been supporting Spurs since 1978, right? So, and I've been going since I was a kid, and I've been through some great times, seen some great stuff, but I've also seen some crap and some rubbish.
Yeah.
But through all that time, you kind of knew we are where we are. We know where we're going. We know what's happening. This is Tottenham. We're mid-table mediocrity, whatever. Pochettino kind of changed all that. Harry Redknapp before him, it kind of got us going. Pochettino came in, and for me, I think that Daniel Levy was so lucky. He was so lucky that Pochettino was as good for Tottenham as he was, because he didn't know that at the start. I mean, the guy came in, could hardly speak English. He was taken a risk by Southampton. So no one really knew what to, I mean, when he came in, I was like, really? Like, the guy can't even speak the lingo. What's, you know? But he turned things around, and he proved how good he could be from that perspective. So he was lucky, and it coincided with Harry Kane becoming the phenomenon that he's become, because again, I can remember Harry Kane doing everything but put the ball in the net. And I'm looking at it thinking, Jesus Christ, you know, we've not signed a striker. We've letting players go. Defoe and Keane were coming to the end and all the rest of it. Where do we go from there? And just so by luck, Harry Kane has stepped up to the plate and done what he's done. And those two things coincided. And that's really what's kept Tottenham where they've been and where we've kept going to, as opposed to staying in mid-table mediocrity and struggling. So for me, Daniel Levy's been really, really lucky with those two things. But he was dazzled by the lights of Mourinho. He probably had him in his ear telling him, you know, I can do something great with these players. They're just not performing. They just need a bit of Mourinho magic. And then he's realised that Mourinho isn't a changed man. He is still the sort of guy that he is, and he still needs serious investment, or he, you know, certainly at Tottenham, because the squad is a problem, and so that's where it leads. And then they fall out, and we end up in the same boat. And I think they were lucky then to get Conte to come to Tottenham to really give it another go. But for me, it's last chance saloon. They really need to think really hard what they're going to do next, because this has to be right now. Otherwise, next season could be even worse than it is now. That's my view.
Just a follow-up question, just before I give my answer on that question as well. Is this the biggest managerial appointment of Daniel Levy's tenure?
Oh yeah, it could be. It could be. I suppose you're only as good as the last one, and you're only looking at what's happening at the moment. Now is the important point. There's no point looking to the past, is there? You know, you could argue that, you know, when they came in, getting rid of George Graham, and then bringing in Hoddle was a big appointment that they had to make, and then they got that wrong, and so on and so on. You know, and it's just been one after the other. I mean, like I say, they were lucky with Pochettino, because outside of that, I think the best we had was probably Harry Redknapp, who basically is a great man manager, and got the club kind of moving in the right direction. But I mean, we've had some right dross in there as well. You know, you think about Sherwood and AVB and, you know, Ramos, you know. So, but for me, I feel like Levy has got to be on the edge of where does he go from here? How does he maintain any kind of credibility with what's going on at the moment? It's just farcical. It's just farcical.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, look, I also agree that I think the situation is worse now for a number of reasons. I think under Jose Mourinho's time, you still had somewhat of a resemblance of Potter's squad. So you still had that sort of somewhat of a resemblance of a camaraderie in that squad, right? Now that's not there. That's completely gone. So for a period, that sort of carried Jose Mourinho through. look, I'll be honest. I hated that. I hated the squad back then more than what I hate the squad now. I think when I look at the squad now, I think if you address the right areas in that squad, you would see a dramatic improvement on that football pitch. I also think when you look at the situation now, right, after Pochettino, Spurs fans were willing to sort of give up the football, the attractive football that we've always been used to, we're synonymous with, the great push and run side and stuff like that, right? They were willing to give it up to try and get over that edge, just to try and get over the final hurdle, and maybe thought that maybe Jose Mourinho just has that extra bit when it comes to them games, that maybe the coolness in the moment that can help us get over the line. But since then, you know, it's just been going downhill. The football's been going downhill on the pitch. That also amplifies it. That also makes it worse. It's been 4 years of compiled misery on that football pitch, not watching players being able to pass the ball 5 yards, you know, a lot of defensive sort of football and stuff like that. So I think it's worse then. Also, my final point on it is back then, the mask, a lot of the problems were masked because we were just off the back of a Champions League final and stuff like that. Now, the reality of the situation and the gravitas of the situation, how big it is, has probably actually sunk home and really kicked in right now. You know, in terms of, you look at the squad, there's no leaders. Harry Kane has 12 months left on his contract. If he goes, we're going to suffer even worse after that. You know, you look at the youth development. We've got players that we're bringing in, but we've also got the youth pathway into the senior team clogged up. You've got youth players' parents not happy about the situation. You've got players that we've brought in here for big money that we can't get rid of, that are, you know, they're out on loan and stuff like that. They're coming back here, and we still need to try and offload them and find buyers. So I think right now, in all aspects, in terms of football, in terms of squad, in terms of the ownership and the problems, I think it's a lot worse now than what it was back then.
Ryan Mason finds himself inheriting the position from two win-now managers that had huge resumes, huge reputations before they came into Spurs. And he's gone into the sort of caretaker role kind of post their sort of reign and era and influence. And I think the scary thing is that when you look at when Jose Mourinho left and Ryan Mason took over, we had a bit of Kane sort of kind of unassured, you know, kind of future. He had the Gary Neville sort of kind of walk that summer and everything like that. Sonny's contract was, I guess, reinsured, but he's actually gotten older, you know, since then. Harry Kane's only gotten older. His contract has actually gone down. In fact, if anything, what you would say is not a whole lot has maybe changed since actually that Ryan Mason sort of, you know, appointment back then with Jose Mourinho. And so that therefore basically makes things somewhat worse. Whereas if time has passed and nothing sort of kind of if nothing, let's say, has really improved over a time period passing, that basically does mean that, you know, things probably are worse, because if there has been no, you know, improvements over a certain amount of time, why would there be the case that it's any better, right? And I think that's what also makes things a bit scary, is that you basically look at it, it is kind of similar on paper, but if it is similar on paper and nothing's really improved, that must mean actually that basically we're in a worse position, because it's not like Harry Kane has gotten any younger, Sonny's gotten any younger. Hugo Lloris's position is now in a much worse position than it ever was. The defense looks even more shambles than it ever was, etc.
Yeah, no, I agree. I say players are getting older as they play and stuff like that, and lose form. And they change the way they play. I mean, Harry Kane's drops a lot deeper now. And listen, I'm a great fan of Harry. I think he does so much for the team, and I think he can drop deeper and provide the assist and stuff like that. But it's just not playing to his. It's not just not playing to his strengths. And as he gets older, you know, you lose something. You have to adapt. All players have to do it, and it's the same for Hugo. I mean, he's getting an awful lot of stick, and unfortunately, it's still deserved, right? Because we're fans, we want to see the players play the right way and do good stuff. And when you're watching him, you know, picking the ball out of the net 5 times in 20 minutes, and you look at some of them opportunities that they scored, and you think Hugo could have done better there. I mean, the defense is shambolic, but you think that Hugo's got to do better, getting beat on his near post and standing there from, you know, how far out, you know, when the guy takes a shot, and it just sails past him, and then this is Hugo. You know,
No.
he's in the back of the net. You know, he couldn't write. I mean, the guy couldn't believe that he'd scored. You know, so you know, and that's why it gets worse, because where's the backup? Where's the plan? Where's the new coming players? Where's the options? And keep changing manager as regularly as we are makes it really difficult to get any kind of plan of where they're gonna where the next benefits coming from. You know, where the next development's gonna go from. You know, how are we gonna put it right?
Problems have almost worsened, right? The same problems that existed that Ryan Mason inherited during the Jose Mourinho time, most of those problems still exist today. So that means they probably have, in fact, maybe even worsened, like, since then, since they haven't really been properly dealt with.
Mason's been sat next to these guys all the way through, right? As a coach, he's still been at the club and all the rest of it. So, you know, and he can only put out the same squad players that we've already got. So, and he can probably only play the same formations that we've already been playing, because who else is there that's going to come in and change it? I mean, we saw Stellini change it against Newcastle, and what a disaster that ended up being. You know,
just quickly, what's your thoughts on that? Is that the worst you've seen on a football pitch from this Tottenham side? Like you said, you've been a fan since the 70s. Is that the worst you've seen?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was shambolic, absolutely crazy. I mean, I watched it in my local club with my son and a few guys from South Dorset Spurs, and there was two Geordies with us, guys that we know in there, and obviously they're jumping up about, screaming. They couldn't believe it, absolutely couldn't believe it, and we're all sitting there in shock. You know, that it was that bad, and for me, it was, you could literally see the confidence disappear from the players. It was like it was draining out of them as they played. Couldn't make a pass, 5 yards, couldn't run, no one wanted to move anywhere. Everyone was hiding. And so you're just inviting trouble on, you know. And don't get me wrong, I thought Newcastle played really well. And I thought, you know, some of their movement and their passing was fantastic. And they deserved to win. Did we deserve to get absolutely rammed like we did? Probably. I hate to say that, but you know, you can't play like that and be as open as that and not expect to get punished, especially against a side that's kind of pushing on and going for top four. You know, there's a lot of good sides out there.
Yeah. And you know what? Look, for me, you know, again, I think it symbolizes, you know, the direction of both clubs and smart investment, right? As much as people go mad about, you know, the Newcastle ownership, and then, you know, they have the full wealth of a whole state behind them. At the end of the day, you've got to spend that, right? You've seen the realities of Chelsea and the spending that they've done, you know, how you can get it wrong. You look at Newcastle, they've got it right, but they've also had stability to keep Eddie Howe on the job. You know, you look at Tottenham, we've been pissing about for 4 years. We've been going in different directions. The recruitment has been coming and going in different directions, from what Steve Hitchen wanted to what Paratici wanted and stuff like that. And all that came to one big head on the pitch. And that's what you see. You see one club that has made the right decisions, and you see one club that has made the wrong decisions. And that's what ultimately culminated in that result.
Yeah.
Daniel Levy is certainly under some pressure right now, Lee. It's been rumored in the past, though, that, you know, the Qatari State Investment Fund, as well as Jam Najafi over here in the USA, have respectively inquired about investing or even buying out the likes of ENIC and their shares. Would Daniel Levy be tempted maybe now, more than ever, actually, by these offers because of maybe the pressure he's under and even just the current situation he finds himself in?
I mean, listen, I've got all respect for the guys that are out protesting and trying to call the owner out and all the rest of it. I think it's probably the right thing to do, and everyone's entitled to their own view and their own process of dealing with it, right? But I look at Daniel Levy as a businessman, right? And I don't think that anyone who runs successful businesses and has earned the money that he's earned will really worry too much about what people are saying about them and how they feel. I don't think they let their personal feelings and their emotions get in the way of that. So I don't think that will make a massive difference in whether he wants to sell or not. I think he said in his Cambridge University interview that all of that stuff was all paper talk and rubbish. So you go, okay, so if he's telling the truth in that, then fair enough. He has also always said that if people want to invest in the club or in ENIC or whatever, then they would always listen to that and always be open to it. But what I mean is that, like, the personal bit of it, I don't think he will drive it. I think ENIC's longer term plan is to turn the London Borough of Tottenham into the London Borough of ENIC. I mean, they're buying up the land all around the club. They're buying up all the old businesses and all the rest of it. And I think, don't get me wrong, Tottenham, and again, with due respect to people that live in Tottenham itself, it's a difficult area. There's a lot of problems there. There's a lot of poverty there, and it needs investment, and it needs someone to do something to it and to support it. But at the same time, it doesn't need some megalomaniac coming in and just turning it into their own private part of the city, So I think there's more there's more in it, for me. And I've said this before, and I might be totally talking crap, right? But I just wonder if they decided to actually sell the club, they might sell the club, but would they consider actually selling the club lock, stock and barrel, including like the stadium and stuff like that? Because there's an awful lot of other stuff that goes on around that stadium now, with the concerts and the skywalk and the go-karting and the rugby.
They sell everything.
And all the rest of it. So why would you sell such a big money making asset? Because ultimately the football club itself makes a certain amount of money, but you get that NFL in there where they're serving beer in the stands. You're selling an awful lot more beer than you will with us only being able to get in there, at half time to get down and get a beer and stuff like that, and the food and all the rest of it. So there's so much money to be made out of the stadium itself. I think if they were interested in selling, I think they might sell the club and go, okay, we'll walk away from the football side of it. But I don't think they necessarily walk away from the business side of it, of that plot of land, that stadium, and everything else that's to come. I mean,
so it's almost like you're kind of saying you could get rid of them from Spurs, but you're not getting rid of them from Tottenham, maybe specifically.
Yeah. That's what I think. And I think, in terms of, because I mean, ultimately, you think about things like the naming rights and stuff like that. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that would give loads of money for naming rights. So you got to wonder why is that not being pushed? What are they holding back for?
What because I'm for.
Yeah. I think
what's waiting? So.
On that, I think it's the time. And I think right now, if they change the name from anything but Tottenham, there will be absolute uproar about it, especially with what's going on the football pitch, which is ultimately what fans care about, especially with the lack of success. I think that could be one of the things that would help tip more and more people over the edge. Newcastle has already been one. And I think right now, I think it's actually a calculated decision not to do the naming rights because, fans are already feeling that disconnect from the club. The club are hearing about it more and more, whether that's true, the football to see on the pitch, whether that's true they can't get with some of these players that we've got here or what have you not. And I think they're smart enough to know that they're not going to do that because that will be a tipping point for a lot of the older fans as well, in my opinion. So I think it's a calculated effort not to do it right now.
Do you agree with Lee, Dave, that maybe Daniel Levy could be tempted or is actually not really listening to the noise, right? As much as maybe we might think that he could be, perhaps despite all the attention and the media, kind of attention that he has right now, he's not actually maybe as sort of affected by it or as influenced by it as we might actually think. Maybe he is actually hard to sway. He's hard to knock off his sort of path. He's hard to rattle, if anything, right? Maybe he's not actually that rattled by the media attention and everything he's getting right now. And he'll sell when he feels like selling. Perhaps all this pressure and everything is maybe not getting to him.
I'll answer that in a sec. I think Lee wanted to say something there quickly.
Sorry, Lee.
No. All I was going to touch back on was the comment about the naming rights. For me personally, I always still call it White Hart Lane, and it'll always be White Hart Lane for me. And I think that the point I was going to make about, you talked about Newcastle and about Mike Ashley and his naming rights there, and that they still called it St James's Park, regardless. And that's all about. I mean, calling it whatever it was, I can't remember the name of the company now, right? But calling it what he called it, that was just to get that all over the TV and to raise the profile. And I think that's probably why they're trying to keep it as Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, so that guys in the States and that when you're talking about NFL being played at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, then people go, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, what's that mean? What's that?
It's obvious, yeah.
And it kind of boosts the name. I mean, if you think about the Wrexham thing and how big that's become with sponsors of TikTok and all the rest of it. I mean, they had that Paul Rudd there at the other weekend and all the rest of it. It's creating that hype. I mean, more people probably in America know about Wrexham than have ever known about Wrexham. A small town in Wales, and now all of a sudden it's like this massive deal. But that's just because they've raised the profile. And I think the thing about Tottenham Hotspur Stadium is probably more to do with selling it as a brand rather than anything else. It's probably worth more until they can get someone come along and go, here's 100 million or he's whatever it is to put it in.
Or if anything, actually, quickly, Lee, I actually think a lot of these guys with the name brand for the stadium and everything, it's going to take somebody that's going to be almost just as interested in that sort of stuff as they are, right? In order to buy them out of all of that. Like, it will be somebody that can say, I kind of like what they have over there with all the real estate and with all the various sort of venues that they can, use to earn money that way and this way. And you might say that probably, like you said, if you really want to get rid of them entirely, you would have to buy them out of all those sort of side interests and everything like as well. And I think the naming rights stadium is probably right. Like, the reason they're reluctant on that is because they know that the more that we get Beyonce concerts, the more the NFL comes in, BMX, whatever it may be, there will be more people just being like, oh, that Spurs stadium looks quite nice. Oh, yeah. That's, must be kind of well-run club. And maybe on surface, it's really not actually, but they just get a better reputation. I see what you mean by that. I agree.
They love it, they look at it, they'll be like, what's the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium? They'll be like, geez, I can go kart, I can rugby, go concert, boxing, I can stay in a hotel, go cinema. It'd be brilliant for them. But no, I think you raise a very valid point there, to be fair, Lee. I do think you raise a very valid point there. But Jack, what you were asking me about Daniel Levy and stepping aside.
Is he affected by the noise now? Like, kind of like Lee brought up earlier. Lee, I think, said maybe since he is a successful businessman, and since he has been, his history and his resume would suggest that maybe he might not be actually as swayed or affected by sort of the noise and everything around him as maybe we might think.
I mean, look, they don't. Some of these millionaires and billionaires, they're shameless. Like, perfect example. Look at Matt Hancock. In England, put all the restrictions in, and then that, he got found out for doing whatever he done over the lockdown and everything else, and then he's on I'm a Celebrity to try and boost his image. Like, it's just like, it's absolutely shameless. And look, there's no way to pay attention to it. He doesn't care. That guy's going home behind his lock gates and he's in his lock gate community, and he's just going in. He's sitting down. He's having his dinner. He's watching his telly. He couldn't care what we have to say about him whatsoever. I think on that regard, he's absolutely spot on. He doesn't care about the noise. However, I'm sure he doesn't like it in the stadium, and I'm sure eventually, if you're a human being, that will get to you. Eventually, your emotions will come to the boil. And I think if it was a larger proportion of the fan base, if it was the unanimous and you could get everyone sort of behind one message, I think that would force them to sell, because I think the public image would come down. You've got Enoch sprayed everywhere. Do they want that image sort of portrayed in that light? I'm not 100% sure.
Could he be getting more sick of it though? Like, perhaps maybe before didn't maybe pay much attention to it, but could it be slowly unraveling maybe him a bit more?
These guys don't sort of let emotions affect their money. That's why they're so rich, right? Even if they see some guy struggling, they won't go, I'll give you 50 quid there, go and help yourself. They're just like, well, he's probably made bad decisions in his life. That's why, that's sort of the way they operate. For me, I don't think it's affecting them whatsoever, Jack. I do think, though, if it was more unanimous and an offer came in, I do think they'd probably consider it. However, it's got to be a price that they want for it. They ain't going anywhere unless someone meets their asking price. And that's just the reality of it. I mean, of course it's going to be inflated because they're going to want, some of the future money that'll come in for the go-kart and everything else on top of it, because they know it's the best. It's the best in London. It's, it's prime. Everyone wants to come there. Everyone wants their events hosted there. Everyone wants to sort of be attached with what's going on there from a business perspective. So for me, unless someone comes along with what they want, I'm not sure they are going to sell it. However, and I'll reiterate this, and I'm going to keep reiterating this to people, you can't just jump at the first offer that comes along and demand that it happens, because with the planning permission and everything else that will come with the sale of Tottenham, if it does happen, you could very well get someone in here that just wants their hands on the property and everything that's coming with it. Build it, prime real estate in London and stuff like that. So, it's got to be someone that wants to come in and take this club forward in a forward direction, that wants to help us more on the pitch, that just wants to splash the cash to make us win trophies. Let's see what happens there. But I'll be honest, I've said this before, I just don't think the noise affects him whatsoever. However, if it was more people that came together and it was unanimous, I think that's when it probably starts to affect them and they might start listening to the noise.
I kind of been feeling like, if anything, though, Daniel Levy has said this before. He was brought in. He took the chairman's role and everything so that he could get more involved, kind of with the hands, be more hands-on with the club, see it more through whatever decisions, so that it could operate more efficiently and more at kind of the levels that he thought it deserved to be at. My thing is, though, is that could it at this stage, though, be starting to wear him down? Like, could he be losing that interest, that sort of vigor, whatever it may be, to show up and trying to get himself, back on the right track? Because he's taken the club 20 years of, he's been here for 23 years at this stage. Like, could he maybe getting a bit tired of kind of, his daily task and his daily role, and seeing that, like we brought up earlier just now, Spurs have either gone in a circle, or even worse than that, they've gone in a circle and then gone even further backwards after that. Is he willing to sort of take all that on and be able to see it through? I feel like maybe a guy like him could probably look at it as maybe something that might look a bit daunting, something that might look a bit intimidating after already being here as long as he has. Do you really have that same energy, that same commitment that maybe you previously did when you were a bit younger, or maybe sort of earlier in your tenure? You might start to lose that kind of passion. And you imagine maybe guys like Scott Munn, of course, have been brought in to sort of head on a lot of the huge rebuild and things like that. But I don't know, Lee, do you feel like over 23 years with the shit show that Spurs find themselves in, could that in itself kind of be maybe already a bit daunting, or kind of a bit intimidating? Like, he's just kind of like, I'm not sure if I really want to be involved in all this anymore. Like, he might want to take a bit of a withdrawn role.
Yeah, I think that's probably why the Scott Munn thing is coming on, because he's like the number two and he's going to be all about the football side of it, whereas Levy's probably going to focus more on the other projects that we've been talking about, the hotel and flats and cinema and everything else. And I think that's probably why. And I think he probably realises, whilst I don't think this bothers him on a personal level, I think in terms of brand Enoch and all the rest of it, he's probably more concerned about that and what that might do with the the stock exchange and investors and all the rest of it, bad PR. I think he's probably more worried about it from that perspective than he would be about it from a personal perspective. And I think this Scott Munn thing, Munn, whatever his name is, I think that is probably part of that. I think his view was, I need to kind of step back out of the limelight as such, because I'm getting dragged more and more into the spotlight. And I think that was part of Paratici coming in. He's going to look after recruitment, so I don't have to get involved in that. And I get this guy in and he's going to look after all of football. He can report to him. I can kind of do that in the background, and everyone's going to start singing, Scott Munn, get out of our club, rather than Daniel Levy, get out of our club, maybe, So I think you're probably right. You do a job for 20 years, it will start to wear on you, especially if it's not going well.
Or if you're back at square one all of a sudden again, like after 23 years, if you're back at square one, like, do you really want to? It's like press and restart, on a game. Like, you're back at level one again, and you're just like, oh, geez, do I really want to go through all this again? Like, and I'm not sure if he does, and I wouldn't blame him if he doesn't, because you've kind of just are starting all over again, and that's probably tiresome. And if anything, probably just something that you're not going into it with as much if anything, kind of good sort of energy and naivete, kind of good naivete, if anything, than before. I think he'll look at it and kind of roll his eyes and feel like, geez, I got to go through all this again.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think he's been around it for a long time. It must be wearing, if you're, I mean, we've all had jobs and stuff where you're working on something and it's not happening, it's not working, and you can't get it to work, or you can't get the right answer to it, or you can't get the project over the line, or whatever it might be. And that becomes frustrating. It becomes tiring. And sometimes you need someone else's eyes on it, someone to give it a little bit more of a boost or whatever. And I think that time may well be coming. But for guys like him that make the money that they make and all the rest of it, you've got to have that steadfast belief in yourself that you can turn it around and stuff. That's why a manager is going to come in and take Tottenham on, right? I mean, if you was around, anyone in their right mind would be going, I don't want to touch that, right?
Yeah.
That place is falling apart. The fans are hating the players are not playing, and you'd be thinking to yourself, I can't be doing that.
No, yeah. And Dave, actually, if it were like a big Lego or something like that, and it just dropped and destroyed right in front of you, like, is Daniel Levy willing to build it all over again? Is he willing to pick up the pieces and start over again?
I don't think so. That takes a special type of hunger, especially if you're back to square one. But also, football is a very quick evolving sort of industry, right? Things evolve very, very quickly. And when I look at that, you can very easily, become out of your depth, where what maybe you've done before worked, it's not working now. And you can very easily sort of, become very, very, what would I say, disillusioned with that you just can't claw back. But however, I feel obviously they're taking a hit in prize money and stuff like that with how this season's going and stuff. I think they'll only ever really sort of sell up as if they see it being more of a depreciation asset, where it's sort of devaluing the money that maybe was once there isn't there. And that's why I think, many people are starting to say, boycott the games, don't buy anything in the club shop and stuff like that. And look, it's been said for a number of years now, for quite some time. It's because I truly only believe they'll only sort of really start to sell when they look at the numbers, and they don't look as healthy as they once did.
Yeah, if anything, I actually think he could be probably a bit more reluctant than ever to pick up those pieces and assemble it again. But is he going to be admitting that to himself? Is he going to be admitting that to anyone else? And will that ever actually surmise to any actual sort of change and movement? I'm not too sure either. And I actually agree with what Lee said earlier. Like, these sort of successful guys, are they really that swayed by all the noise and pressure that's around them? It's likely not the case. They're very, rarely rattled.
The only thing I was gonna pitch in about all of that, and I think you're right, Dave, about hitting the income streams and stuff. I think a lot of people talking about boycotting the games it's a really difficult one, because, like myself, I've got a season ticket, so I've already paid for it.
Yeah.
So do I boycott the game? I personally lose that money. Okay, it's not a great look for the stadium, but they'd argue, say, on a Thursday night, well, it's difficult for fans to get there, blah, blah, blah. If I sell it on, the club then get a cut of that from the sell-on value, as if you sell it through the system. For me, I think probably the biggest impactor would be an empty stadium before the game, an empty stadium after the game. No one buying anything up at half-time and the rest of it. I did a video way back when we were going through another rough period, and I walked down the stairs after the game, and the bar was absolutely rammed. People buying drinks and burgers and all the rest of it. And I'm like, this is the reason why they won't ever sell it up. Yeah. And you need to impact something along those lines. And for me, the income streams from the food and the drink and all the rest of it would probably be a real significant thing if they could see people going off and supporting the local pubs, the local restaurants, the local cafes and burger bars and all that kind of stuff. So for me, I think that's probably a good way to do it. And I think as well, inside the stadium, if you've got the fans inside the stadium, singing, for Levy to go or for change or whatever, that's probably more impactful than an empty stadium. And this is just my opinion, right? So it's probably more impactful because you will hear it on the TV. You will see the disenchantment of the fans and all the rest of it. And I think that sends a bigger message than an empty stadium or a stadium full of, people that are not always able to get there, because someone will always want to go. There'll always be people to buy the tickets. I guarantee it. I guarantee you on Thursday night, there's a big showing of people there. I guarantee it, because it's an opportunity to go and watch your team play.
Against Man United of all teams as well.
And people have paid their money. Yeah, people have paid their money already. So
yeah,
I think it's a real difficult one to really put your finger on. I understand why people are saying boycott the game. I understand why people are saying walk out and all the rest of it. But you really need to cut off those other strings. When you're protesting, and it's difficult because they protest across the road opposite the shop. But ideally, what you want is to protest in front of the shop to discourage people going into the shop. Because that's really where you want to hit them, is because that shop, you have to queue to get in it. I mean, that's how ridiculous it is.
Yeah.
Biggest club shop in Europe, and you've still got a queue to get in because so many people want to go in there. You've got to combat those kinds of things to really hit the pocket. But like I say, it's just an opinion. So anyone who wants to slate me off about it, it's just my own personal
it's
opinion.
valid, man.
Not telling you what to do.
You pay your money to buy a season ticket. It's valid that you have a say on it. It's an interesting perspective where, look, it's already paid for. It's sort of like, they already got my money. So it's not like I'm putting money in their pocket going to this game, because they've already got it. So I get it.
I mean, I could decide not to renew my season ticket, right? Okay, I could decide to do that. And people have said to me, you don't renew. And I know people that aren't going to renew, right? But I waited years to get a season ticket. I mean, I used to go to games on scraps, now and again, here and there, a ticket when you could get one and all the rest of it. I've got myself a season ticket. Do I really want to give it up? Because it's the club, it's in my heart. I love the club. Always have loved the club. I've been going for such a long time. And now it consumes a big part of my life. So why do I have to give it up just to send a message to someone else? As in Daniel Levy, because someone else is going to buy my season ticket because there are people waiting to get one. So it's a real difficult question, and you have to make your own decision yourself as a person. You have to make that decision about what's good for you or not.
Yeah, fair. Interesting insight. It'd be interesting to see what people, make of that in the comments. I'm actually really liking your perspective so far, Lee. They're giving me food for thought. There's a lot of things to really sort of talk about and consider, and there's sort of perspectives that are, I haven't really heard yet. So big yourself up, my man.
That's what this podcast is for, as well as to get new voices, I think, in that maybe we haven't heard exactly before as well. That also people who, maybe only have the time also to come on for a podcast like this as well. Spurs' PR team are on overdrive, though, Lee. They're setting up a fan advisory board called FAB. Reimbursing the fans for their trip to Newcastle has been a new thing they've done. And they're actually even referring to chairman updates from Daniel Levy as announcements from Daniel. Do you think the recent gestures are maybe a step in the right direction, or are they maybe just sort of token gestures, maybe just sort of do the bare minimum to save face right now? What do you make of sort of all these various PR moves?
Listen, I think if this had been done at any other time, right, then I'd think it's a step in the right direction, right? I do like the idea of fans being able to have some kind of say. How much say they're going to get, how much it's going to get listened to, it could all just be lip service. And we are all in the position of thinking Daniel Levy's just going to pay lip service to this. He ain't going to take no bloody notice of it. Yeah. But that's how we feel about it, right? But if it was real, if it was something that's really going to be looked into and thought about, then I think it is something that I would personally welcome. I think it's a good thing. But it's how it gets done. Who gets the roles, who gets to choose the roles, how much input do they get? Are they actually going to listen and all the rest of it? But I think the timing is probably makes it worse. I've seen a lot of people talking about getting their money back for Newcastle, and I think absolutely those people probably deserve their money back because that was an absolute shambles. And I think it's probably the right thing to do. They're not the first squad to do it to the fans. I've seen it done by other fans, other players from other clubs and stuff. And I think it's probably the right thing to do. do think it's a bit of a token gesture. We've seen them play badly before and all the rest of it. And football's one of those things you have to take the chance. You never know what you're going to get from a Premier League football game because anyone can beat anyone. And we've seen that so often. We didn't think that Southampton were gonna take that lot to a draw. No one would have thought that Chelsea or Liverpool would have struggled this season. No one would have thought that they would have been at the top of the league. And do you know what I mean? It's just, and that's the love of Premier League football. So I think you have to kind of expect that your team will get beat, right? In the manner they got beat, I think for me is the biggest issue, and I think that was probably the right thing to do. The one that really tickled me, if I'm being honest, was with the announcement from Daniel, like mate Daniel, just one of the lads. Down the
I read that the same way.
Yeah, and he signed it off coys, and I'm like, really? Do you even know what that means? Like, does that really? How does that resonate with you, Daniel, my old mate? I mean, if you're gonna do that, he should have gone from Danny or Dan the man or something. Dan the man. That's something like that. It is a bit laughable, isn't it? Like that kind of.
I read it the same way, Lee.
Yeah,
I read that the same way. I thought that was such an obvious ploy because I remember it used to be those announcements were like update from the chairman or like official announcement from chairman Daniel Levy. And now it's just a quick announcement from Daniel here. Like, just pop it in, Daniel saying hi. Like, it's just it's so different. The tact, the way
your old mate, Danny boy, he's just turned up and he's going to give
just
you
having a word, just giving you a bit of an update here, like an email or like a newsletter.
Yeah.
Because they're so frequent.
Yeah.
No, they're so frequent. They're just little
every other day.
They're so frequent. Like no one wants to feel like they're being spoken down to every 10 minutes. A statement comes out, so that's why they've changed it from the chairman to Daniel. So it becomes more personal because they're so frequent, right? It's.
In between, buy this tracksuit or try this summer wear, or buy yourself a new mattress, a Tottenham mattress, or it's just bombarding you with, trying to sell you something all the time at a time when things couldn't be worse. It's just crazy, absolutely crazy. I did say I put a tweet out where I said, after the Newcastle game, I can't wait to see the players tweeting, tough day, hard result, we go again, 6 more cup finals, all that crap how many times have we seen that over the course of the last few seasons, and I'm sure the players want to do it in the right way, but it's just PR. It's just that old chestnut that you're kind of getting the whole time, watching them doing videos of them all cycling together as a group, having fun in training and stuff. I'm like,
playing cricket.
Yeah, get yourselves running around that pitch. Get some pain inside you. Get some pride back, for God's sake.
Or the same trick only works so many times, right? The same sort of apology only works so many times. You only can word the same apology in the same type. Like you can only make it look unique in only so many ways, and it runs out, right? You run out of lives, right, with the fans, and you just have. I think you said it before, Dave, right? Actions speak louder than words, and they basically have run out of words. They've run out of fancy backgrounds with social media text in front of it, and from quotes from the players and everything. Like, fans have gotten tired of it. Like, that just doesn't work anymore. And even if it didn't work before, like, it certainly doesn't now.
For me, I just struggled with it all. Like Look, the Fab is an attempt to sort of quell the noise or the atmosphere that's going to be surrounding the game on Thursday. Look, I said this earlier on the live show, and I got absolutely ridiculed for it. But, it's a foot in the door. It's a foot in the door, and everyone's been asking for engagement. Everyone's been asking for representatives to have a say inside the club. And it may not be what the broader fan base want. They want more of a say on more things. I get it. But you've got to start somewhere, right? And it's a foot in the door. And who knows where it can grow to. But it's also how the club decides to use it. Are these people going to be allowed to communicate with fans, or will there be NDAs signed and they're not allowed? Will the fans be able to elect the people that are going into it at fair elections without the club going, don't like what they've said about Enoch or Levy in the past, they ain't getting on the board and stuff like that. Yeah. It's kind of like, They have a real opportunity here if they want to do things the right way, get real fan representatives, that fans want in there. Get them in there rather than the club maybe dictating who goes in there because of what they say and this, that, and the other. But also how them fans relay the message back to the other fans. Are they allowed to do that? Because if they are, it might even give fans an even more broader understanding of what's going on. It might start actually fans talking to each other instead of arguing with each other. And getting the right stuff up into the boardroom that we want answered, right? I think there's a good opportunity there for that to happen. However, will that happen? I'm not so sure. If I go off what I've seen in the past, I think there'll be NDAs signed. I think the people will probably be more or less handpicked and stuff like that. So for me, I'm a bit dubious on it, and I do understand why everyone else is dubious. To the players, I'm sick of it. Heard it after Zagreb, right? Put out a statement. Hugo Reese came out, everything else. Had enough. Do it on the football pitch where it actually matters. And, to refund a £30 ticket, people paid more to travel up and down. Lee, have you gone to Newcastle away?
I didn't go this time. I have been up there. I have been up there before. I would think, depending on where they're travelling from, but like for me, if I travel from here in Poole to London for a game, it's £100 on the train. I mean, I travel up with a supporters club, South Dorset Spurs, and those guys, we share a minibus. We pay £40 each. But I mean, even that's significant. Like you have to all put together to pay that. So like £100 on a train or whatever. So I can't imagine it being a lot cheaper than something along those lines for those fans to get up there. And by the time you add, your breakfast, your dinner, your a few beers, something on the way home, somewhere.
Kids.
And if there's more than one of you, like you say, with kids and stuff like that, I mean, you're talking about a significant amount of money. A £30 ticket is probably the tip of the iceberg. It's a token gesture, isn't it?
It's all it is.
It's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do for that game for sure. But I wouldn't want to see it as a regular. Every time they play shit, they have to pay the ticket back, because it just, they'd always be paying the money back at this rate. It would just be a nightmare, wouldn't it?
I think it is slightly bare minimum, though. I think it is like they could have gone further. Like I've said this before, where airlines, Lee, you see when an airline will screw you over, they'll pretty much give you a lot of stuff, right, to kind of make you sort of feel like, okay, like they apologize. They're clearly sorry about how my experience was, because they know you're a paying customer. And if you had a terrible experience, you're unlikely to come back and give them money again. So they're going to do whatever it takes to try to convince you that they can appease, right? They'll give you whatever token gestures, to make you feel like you can, give them money again. The thing is,
there's a big difference there. There's a big difference there. No, sorry to cut in. The big difference.
No, yeah, I think I know what you're going to say.
Is when you're going. That's a service, right? So you're paying for a service. You get a shit service.
Good point.
You deserve compensation, right? With football, it's an entertainment, right? But the other thing with football is it's an addiction. Right, so you're not going to go, you know what, they played so badly today, I'm going to go and support Wrexham, or I'm going to go and support Man City, or whatever.
Good point.
There are fans that will do that. Of course there are, right? There are that sort of people that are just football fans and will go to whatever games and all the rest of it. But generally speaking, the hardcore, normal football fan is addicted to their club. That's why we've got YouTube channels. That's why we've got podcasts. That's why we've got merchandise and all that kind of stuff, because people want to show their colours. It's who you belong to. I mean, when I was a kid growing up, there wasn't merchandise. You could buy a kit, and that was about it. And those kits didn't even have badges on, right? So you could get a kit maybe, but it wasn't like an official thing and club shops and all the rest of it. It's only as time's gone on where people have become more and more, into their club, that they want to show that pride. So I think the big difference is they only have to do the bare minimum because they know you're coming back next week.
Correct.
They know, because you're addicted to it. You can't help yourself.
But the risk of them losing their, it's sad to say, clientele is not as great. The risk of losing them is just not as severe. And so they don't have to make as over the top gestures, or they don't have to reach as far across the aisle to try to get people, back on their side. That's spot on, actually.
But here's the thing, what annoys me, right? Sanchez got booed last week. Everyone says he's human. What about them fans that travel? They're human. Why not give them a nice personal touch? Why can't Harry Kane or someone like that, get a letter drafted up from the club with their names on it, make it sort of personal and send it out to them? So what if it's 3,000 fans with how bad it's been and what they've endured and the money they've spent to travel up and down the UK and across Europe? Even a Harry Kane or a Hugo Lloris club captain or someone like that the club can't put a letter together to send out to them guys, maybe just to apologise for what went on and stuff like that, rather than just put out a blanket statement across social media. I've had enough of it. These players get protected too often. People, you can't boo Sanchez, he's human, fine. Well, then you show some humanity towards the fans then. You show humanity. They're sick of it. You've been applauded. You've been sung about. You've got songs about you, personal songs to their name. Fans, the adulation they get through social media and everything else every day. At times, be human. Show yourself as human and maybe send that personal touch back. That's where I'm at with it. I've had enough. There's other things they could have done, because the reality is that person who paid the €30 for a ticket, they're sitting there pissed off. It's like, what's the point? I spent more money traveling, more money on food. Whereas if they would have even just got a personal letter with their name, just apologising, signed by Harry Kane or something like that, it would actually mean more to them than that bloody 30 quid, because it shows that person cares, that player cares,
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's a great point. It's a great point, and there's more the club could have done. I mean, they could send them vouchers for a beer and a pie and a pint and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's loads of stuff they could do. Is it ever enough? I don't know. I don't know.
That's a good point.
It's a real difficult one, because they're not going to give you back the amount it's actually cost you, because it has cost an awful lot. But you're right. Just getting your ticket money back is a token gesture, but it's what I kind of guess it's what
fans never
what you
unsee
expect.
the 6-1 either. So
you live well. It's like this whole point. I watched the Daniel Levy thing with Cambridge University, and he made the point when they were talking about financial fair play. And I know I'm digressing, right? But he made this point about Chelsea, Man City, and all the rest of it, and they've been charged, and we'll see where that comes from, and blah blah blah. The thing is, right, you can go to Man City and say you're guilty of this and all the rest of it, and they can strip them of them titles. They can take them away from them, right? They can take the cups back and all the rest of it. But what you will never take back is the feelings that those fans had on those days when they won those trophies, when they travelled, like Chelsea fans travelling to Champions League finals and seeing their team win the Champions League or whatever it is, Man City winning the Premier League and FA Cups. Those fans will remember those days forever. I was at a couple of FA Cup finals in the 80s. And I live off of that. 40 odd years later, I'm still living off it, right? Because it's the only glory I've ever had. But I still live with it, right? And I'm sure those fans will have it to say, even if you take it away, I'm sure all those Juventus fans that lost all their titles and stuff probably still remember.
I was going to make that point too. Good point.
Exactly. The great times that they had, regardless of whether they've still got a tin can at the end of it. It don't really matter to you. It's the memories that will stick with you, which is the same point about the losing 6-1. They can give you your money back, but you still had to live that day and seeing that, that performance,
Yeah. And just before we move off, maybe to talk a point on the players and the fan advisory board. Have you applied, Lee? Are you going to go for it yourself? Did you put together your business plan?
The application?
Nah, it's not for me. Not for me. Not that kind of thing. I don't think. I think that needs someone who is very diplomatic, who's able to see both sides of it, who's probably who needs to be passionate, right? But someone who can probably see the other side of it. And I don't think I'd ever see the other side of it. I just want to see success on the pitch. I want to see us win a trophy. That's my passion. That's what I want. I love going to the games because I love traveling with my mates. I love going to Gilpin. I love going to LTs and listening to DJ Dell and stuff like that. And that's all part of that day for us. So we leave at 8 o'clock in the morning the last time, and we don't get home till 10 o'clock at night. So it's a full day, thing for us. And I don't want to give that up, because that's what it's all about for me. So I'm an old kind of fan who enjoys those sorts of things rather than trying to create a direction for the club and going through that kind of stuff with Mr. Levy. I don't think me and him would get on very well, old Danny boy. To be honest.
Fair enough. You're making me jealous though, listening to your match day routine. I wish I had something like that, my man. You're making me jealous.
Well, let's maybe end it there on sort of the whatever we find ourselves in, which is a constant sort of discussion of fixing Spurs, getting in the right step in the right direction, and it's often maybe on the fans, I guess, to sort of point us in the right direction. It sort of feels like. But Lee, appreciate all your input. We love hearing sort of a new influence, new voice, as well as kind of just new opinions. And that's why I like this podcast, because we get to kind of just get different voices on. But we're going to put your channel and everything in the comment section so people can go check you out. But any final words / maybe things that people could look forward to on your own channel?
No, guys, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. I know it's been difficult to kind of sync up when we can do it, but it's been great. It's been like a nice therapy session to get a few things off your chest and that. And it'd be good to catch up with you up at the ground sometime. Yeah. I know we've bumped into each other before, but if you get a chance to get up again, let me know and we'll meet up and I'll buy you a pint.
No, 100%. Look, I'd love that. Bring me down to your where what you say, the Gilpin, is it?
We'll go to the Gilpin Bell for breakfast. We're going there after breakfast. Got a little back room, and the South Dorset Spurs go in there. We have a bit of an area there, and then after that we go across to LT's. It used to be called the Phoenix in Edmonton, and it's a top pub. Any proper Tottenham fan will know LT's, mate. DJ Del in there banging out some tunes and stuff. It's a nice. Good place to go.
For me, forget the pub. I'm all about the grub, Bring me for that breakfast. That's where I want to be, my man. But everybody out there, Lee's being polite. Get over to Lee Dorset Spur. Yeah. Smash that subscribe button. The link is there. I was having a giggle with him before, and I used to love. He used to drive around in his car to get away from everybody and just speak about Tottenham and get it off his chest. Sort of reminds me of my dad in a way. He drives around ranting about Tottenham, and it was very therapeutic. But since then, he now sits there like he is now and puts up his videos and stuff like that. I think, he's had some really interesting takes today. You want more of them, you'll find them over there on that channel. Smash the subscribe button.
Everybody, hit that like button, please, on the way out. Check out Lee's channel, and hopefully you enjoyed this sort of sit down in Lee's car where we had a bit of a therapy sort of session here. But on the way out, everybody, like I said, get your comments down below on sort of anything that we might have said that either you agree, disagree with. Feel free to put it down below, everybody. But we will be seeing you. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on.
Hello, Spurs.